I want to thank everybody for joining today. I think it's going to be, we put a lot of time into this presentation, and I think it's going to give you guys, a really good guide for tracking UTMs as an e-commerce marketer. And I'll talk a little bit more about myself, but if you want to go ahead and follow me on socials, Alex Cruz for you, primarily on Twitter, and then you can look for me on Alex Cruz on LinkedIn if you want to connect. So quickly to begin, a stat that you guys might want to think about is, does UTM tracking lead to increased e-com ROAS? Shocker, but yes, tracking with UTMs does lead to a higher ROAS based on many studies that we've seen. And it just basically boils down to, if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. Interestingly enough, we're doing a major survey of top e-com brands, and there are still brands that do technically perform and are running, and a lot of the leadership that we've talked to has no idea what UTMs even are. And so there's a little bit of a contrast. I know we have some agencies here learning about UTMs and e-com brands of, just people that know some things really well and other things not so well. And so I hope to give you guys a good overview on this call. If you're an e-com leader, or if you're an agency that's working within this topic, so that you can improve your skills. And so what we're going to learn today is understand how to structure UTMs, create a naming strategy, learn what to track in your UTMs, understand the biggest UTMs mistakes you should avoid. And if we do, like Phil mentioned, have a gift for you if you stick around to the end. It's going to be a really great discount on a UTM tool. And we have a cheat sheet that's going to save you guys a ton of time when it comes to automating your UTMs and your naming conventions. So a little bit about me. I'm the founder and CEO of PenPath. We're based out of St. Louis, Missouri. I'm interested in human behavior and the psychology and sociology of what moves people and how do we get them to ultimately purchase or change their behavior. Personally, I'm a big fan of MMA and personal health optimization. And I'm pretty good at connecting dots, and I see that kind of the proclivity to do that across a lot of the topics we're going to be talking about today. I hope to synthesize for you to make it a little bit more digestible. I've been in the industry for 13 years using Google Analytics and this type of data. And I've done analysis and consulting for fast-growing startups all the way to Fortune 500 brands, and have driven over $525 million in incremental revenue. And so I hope to share a lot of those insights today. And I want to talk about certain skills that I've developed to help us kind of think about these topics and how they kind of cross a little bit of the technical and the application of this information, right? So as we built PenPath, which I'll talk about a little bit in a second, we understood how data is ultimately being delivered from these platforms. And those platforms obviously include Google Analytics, Shopify, Google Ads, Meta, etc. Understanding how the API delivers that data is really critical, because then you can understand the building blocks of these insights that we're going to use. I do have a marketing background as well, so I understand the practitioners and what they think when it comes to performance marketing and how to get the most out of that information. And then ultimately, utilizing those insights is critical, right? And understanding what to do, what actions do we need to take. And UTMs are going to be such an important part of all of that. And, a lot of this can be automated. So we're going to give you guys some shortcuts and cheat sheets, like I mentioned. A lot of this needs to be interpreted by teams. It may start very simple in this in this webinar, but it's going to build. And so by the end of this, this talk, it's going to feel like it's going to be a lot of information. But like Phil mentioned, if you guys do that survey, give us some feedback, you are going to be able to get these slides. And then ultimately, again, we're going to show you how to drive results and what do some of these things mean. So again, PenPath is a business intelligence and data growth e-commerce solutions company. So we provide services and the software necessary to fully understand your business and scale it. And so we do partner with incredible partners like Phil and his team at MeasureMinds to do the areas that we don't specialize in. And together we really provide a comprehensive set of software and skills to support growing brands. So definitely reach out if you guys want to learn more about what we do and how we may be able to help you out or partner. Okay, so here's what we see happening. A lot of leadership goes off into a meeting, then they come back to their team, and they usually have something like, hey, we must double sales to stay profitable. They say something very daunting, or you're just starting a brand and you need to double sales to have a lot of success. And so a typical team reaction is going to look a little like this, where everybody's super shocked and a little bit stressed out. And how are we going to do this, right? And so, they might say, ROAS is so volatile. Where do we start? Or I don't know where to start understanding how to scale. Where do we even go to get things going? And so whether this is what your leadership team wants or what you want for your company, ultimately you need to improve performance and you need to understand how are you going to set yourself up for success. And we all know that, data is the way to do that, right? And understanding it. And so much like, priests back in the day were the only ones who could read and interpret the Bible, and everybody would listen to what their interpretation was. I want you guys to have that power and those skills to enable your team, right? And ultimately what that looks like is if we do X, then Y will happen. Based on the data, this is clearly what should happen or what might happen or what we need to test. And again, UTMs are going to be a critical part of that. And so we're in the business of analysis. And, we understand sort of some of the building blocks that have helped these brands scale very quickly. And ultimately, you're going to have to do something to achieve your goal. And so I do want to take it back a little bit to the fundamentals because, again, UTMs are going to be such a critical part of this. But make sure you understand what problem you're solving. So that's kind of the strategy layer of of how you're going to apply UTMs. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So what are we trying to do with this data, right? And then you have a hypothesis. If we do X, then I think Y will improve. Maybe you're promoting a product and you're using UTMs to track that, and you think you're going to generate more acquisition or better acquisition numbers. And then how do you measure X activity, right? What are we going to do? What are we going to test to drive results and improvements? And then how do we measure Y? What are we looking at on the other side of X? Is it impressions associated with UTMs? Is it clicks? Is it conversion rate? Is it sales? Obviously, it's all of those, but try to understand what are you going to focus on and measure. And then after it's, did you do X? If so, did Y happen? And then rinse and repeat. Now, again, this might seem very simple, but this is such a foundational piece that everything will flow from. And again, UTMs are going to help track those inputs. Now, I do want to quickly mention that this part is success with UTMs requires preparation. And so technical preparation means the configuration of the tools that you use, some understandings, which you're investing in today. After today, you're going to be dangerous enough to do some things yourself or know how to ask about, what are some of the technical things you might want to think about. And strategic preparation. So strategic preparation is what are we going to measure? Because if you measure too much, you're going to be overwhelmed and you're going to create some common mistakes that we've seen. So I just want to take a pause. To succeed with UTMs, you're going to have some technical preparation and strategic preparation. And so I'm going to talk now about what those mean and how you can make sure you succeed. So for those that are familiar with UTMs, you already know what you're measuring. But let's say you're restarting the year and you want to revisit what you're doing with UTMs, or you're starting from scratch. Answering a few questions about your strategy is going to help you kind of get an understanding of what might be important. And again, we're going to get very concrete and tactical here soon. I'm going to just start by, getting your guys' brain in the right kind of mentality here of what you might want to measure. And then I'm going to give you some specific ideas and things you can measure. But let's think about this. Where are you advertising? Who are you going to reach? What will your message be? And what are you going to do to drive those sales? What are you going to focus on to drive those sales? Now, again, answering these questions will align you with what ultimately your data is going to need to tell you. And so that's a really good start. So again, I've seen the gamut, and I've consulted with the biggest companies and the smallest, and different people use UTMs differently. And so I asked Measure Minds to put together a quick poll for you guys. I want to understand, how well would you currently say you're using UTM data to influence your decisions? Now, I'm not asking, are you using UTMs? I'm asking, do you use that information that UTMs give you to influence your decisions? Now, as you guys answer these questions, those that are more advanced, again, we're going to build on some of this stuff. I'm going to start with the basics and then go from there. Looks like we're getting a lot of 8s, 9s, and 10s, and we have some that are in the lower area. I'd say it looks like a lot of 8s and some 6s and 5s. And so again, what I've seen is some people are very good at part of the UTMs, and maybe not, or part of the UTM strategy, and part of one section of what UTMs are, and weak in another. And so very interesting. Thanks for participating here. So let's start with the foundation very quickly. What is a UTM? So UTMs, 𝐸COM tracking modules, which is, you'll never have to remember what that stands for or what that means. It's purely here for those who are curious what UTM stands for. But essentially, UTMs are tags added to URLs that help track where website traffic comes from. And that is a data point that everything can flow, downhill from there, right? And so they allow marketers to see which ads, campaigns, or sources, etc., are driving clicks and conversions in tools like Google Analytics. And so a link is then read, a link to your website is read by Google Analytics, and it parses out information from that URL. And so let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. Here's what it may look like to you. Those of you that are familiar with UTMs know this. If you're not, the orange part is the appended information to the URL. UTMs are critical when tracking information. And so you'll have an advertisement, right? That advertisement will take people to your website, and that information is passed on. And again, that information is collected based on the analytics tool that you're using. Google Analytics kind of standardized a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, and it's kind of sustained in the industry for the most part. And then ad platforms have added more additional appendages that, since the start of UTMs. And so we'll talk about what those might be and how you can use those. But generally speaking, we're talking about inserting information so that you understand where people came from, and you can associate that data with sales, conversion rate, and what products are selling and where, and more. So very, very powerful tool. And again, I've talked to many e-com leaders. They still don't use these, and even agencies we see don't fully use UTMs or get the most out of them. So despite it being around for a long time, despite it being pretty commonly used, there's a lot of meat on the bone for those who want to get really proficient with UTMs. You can have a significant competitive advantage. So I want you to really, take that into consideration. And again, you can answer simple questions like, how did people get to my store? And then much, much more if you start combining the data. So again, with PenPath, we don't like the way GA4's layout is done. You may be a fan. I'm assuming you're not. And we take that information and make it more accessible, filterable, segmentable. And all of this is possible with UTMs. Maybe you're using something like Looker or your own solution, totally fine. All of this information is still going to apply. But ultimately, you need to understand what's working and what's not, right? Remember X and Y, inputs and outputs. How are we getting people to the website? Are they buying? Okay, how do we do more of that? If they're not, how do we do something else that works better, right? It's very fundamental. And the secret to successful analysis is segmentation, because knowing that your traffic is up by 30% is not as helpful as understanding that 90% of your growth came from a specific Facebook ad. So the more segmented you are in any analysis that you do, the more successful you can be, right? Now you can take it a step further. It's from this Facebook ad, and it's primarily from, Denmark, or, this product that was selling. You can actually take it pretty specific, and that's going to give you what you think a great insight looks like. A great insight is developed by great segmentation. And so you may want to segment by the different components of a UTM, which we're going to be talking about, or others that are available that we're not, really covering in as much detail today. But the common trend you'll see is the campaign level, the source medium level, the term level, and the content level. Okay, those are all appended parts of the UTM. And in our dashboards, you see clean, because PenPath actually cleans a lot of the dirty source medium data and unifies it. So it's not like fb.com, facebook.com. It's all singular and sorry, synthesizer combined, whatever you want to call it. So again, this is what you should be doing. You can do it in Google Sheets if you want, or however you want. You can do filters in GA4. But let's break down that example UTM into the different parts and understand how it was done and why. So we have the source. In this example, it was Instagram, right? It was the platform that was shown. Medium was paid social. The campaign was mascara spring launch, right? So it's kind of the name where you put your initiative. The term, this is a practice that we do. We usually like to add the targeting in the term as a default if there's no keyword. So right now you're looking at a lookalike 5%, and at the content level is actually super important. And I think I would say most people don't use the content level as much as they should. Content is the ad level, and I'll talk more about that here during this presentation. But you're seeing I'm adding the product ID, the product name, and the ad name inside of the content level. So I'll ultimately understand what product it was, the product ID, and the ad name. Now you don't have to do all these three, and again, this is where some strategy comes into play. But I'm injecting information into the UTM that I'm then going to manage. I'm then going to analyze down the road, right? Let's go over again the anatomy of UTM and what the essentials are. You have the medium, which is the marketing type. Today, we're primarily going to be focusing around paid social and paid search, mostly Facebook and Google, but obviously there's a ton of different platforms and ways you can track the marketing type. You have the source, where the traffic came from. The campaign is what I usually call the initiative. What's the initiative? How are you going to name an initiative? You have the term, and again, like I mentioned, I love using the term for targeting, so ad group or ad set. And then if you're using search ads, it's gonna auto-populate with keyword. And then content, right? And so content, I think, is just anything specific about the creative that you're then going to measure. This statistic is not shown here, but studies have shown that creative can be 60% of the influence of your success. So what you say on that creative, the thumb stopper, is going to have a 60% influence on your success. And so if that is the importance of creative, then you really need to make sure you're measuring it in a way, or testing it in a way, that you can look back and scale and improve on. And again, all of that is shown at the bottom in the UTM, and it's usually after the little. So again, you have the URL, a question mark, and the rest of the UTM. So not to belay the point, but just very quickly, this is kind of the pyramid. And another thing I want to mention is that whenever you're setting up in most ad platforms, pretty much all ad platforms, I can't think of many that wouldn't be the case. This would be the case. I guess some programmatic, but you have the same structure. It's you're advertising in some sort of way, some sort of marketing type. You have a source of traffic. You're going to have a campaign. Within your campaign, you're going to have who you're targeting. Within who you're targeting, you're going to have that content, right? So this is a screenshot from Facebook. You have to set up your campaign. Once you have your campaign, you have to set up your ad sets, which live inside the campaign, and then the ads, which live inside your ad sets. So that's why it's important to just kind of think about this for those who maybe are not as familiar in how we've definitely structured our stuff. And again, it's going to build from here for those of you who are more experienced. I just want to make sure we covered some of the fundamentals. All right. So we're going to give you a cheat sheet if you stick around to the end, and it's going to help you guys organize your UTMs. Whether you use our cheat sheet or your own, definitely want to keep track of all of the short codes that you use, all of the little the key to how you guys reuse and utilize your UTMs. And Uplifted is also partnering with PenPath, and you guys are going to get, it's a really cool tool for managing this as well. And so you can also get a discount code if you guys stick around to the end. All right, so now it's going to get a little bit more rich in terms of giving you guys specific tactics to use, which I know a lot of you advanced guys are going to love that. Guys and gals are going to love that. And so for some of you guys that are not as familiar, it may get a little bit, like I said, we're going to get into the weeds. So let's talk about what exactly you want to add in your UTM. So we're going to talk about tactics and strategies. So on the left, you have a column of what you can track, and on the right, we're going to talk about why it's useful. Top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, pretty standard, helps measure what stage of the funnel is driving the most conversions. After we go over these, I'm going to show you where to put them in the UTM. But you also might want to add in your UTM new versus returning customers, right? This is really important to segment if you are splitting out your targeting in that type of manner. Conversion, awareness, and traffic. This is so this is what's the focus of your campaign. So you can typically have, awareness, a traffic conversion campaign in most platforms. Understand what it's optimized for. So add that in your UTMs. Creative type, right? Make sure you understand what you're doing there and add that in your UTM. Discounts, free shipping, BOGO, seasonal. Discounts are really good to add in your UTMs as well. Placement is really important. Some of this is already available through the dynamic tracking for some of these platforms. Like they'll automatically put it came from Instagram if you use the proper dynamic code. But if you want more information, or if you want to reiterate that, you can also add it in the UTM. Again, the creative type is also something that's pretty important. So you can describe what it is, like a puppy, or describe the video, or you can just put a static image, carousel, video, collection. So different ad formats that these platforms provide. Again, lookalike, prospecting, retargeting. If you have different naming for some of the audiences you're targeting. Product is really important. I highly recommend, and we're going to be talking more about products because this is around e-commerce. Putting that in your UTMs is really, really helpful, because you can do insights. Like one of the most useful insights we do at PenPath is, what are the products that are bringing in most new customers? What are the products that are bringing in most repeat customers? And so understanding that's going to be pretty important. Having ads that actually focus on products has been very successful, or product categories if you have thousands of products. And then different kinds of ICPs if you want to add that as well. And last but not least, if there's anything specific that you're doing to make it a thumb stopper. Okay, so now that we've covered some of those ideas, let's see how we translate those into a UTM. So we talked about the funnel stages, right? And so that could be utilized at the campaign or term level. We actually double dip in terms of where we put the naming. Sometimes we'll put the naming at the campaign and at the term level. It doesn't matter, because it's all, you can always filter it out or slice it and dice it. New versus returning, that's usually going to be at the term level. And again, all of this is going to be in the cheat sheet. So, and the slides, if you guys do the survey. Looking at the time, I'm going to speed up a little bit just so you guys so we can get through a few more slides. But the point of here is, you got to know where to put the UTM and what the final value might look like. So again, here's what the ultimately final value will look like. And the cheat sheet that we have and an Uplifter would also be able to create that UTM for you. All right, so given that we are a little bit limited on time, I'm just going to focus on Meta and Google Ads. This is where most e-com shops should spend most of their time. And let's talk about some specific things to e-commerce that you're going to find. So you're going to have different ad types inside of Google and Facebook. And here's an example of, you have a search query and you're going to have shopping ads and you're going to have search ads. So if I'm trying to insert data into these, Unfortunately, I wish it was so simple where you could just always use the same format, but this is where it gets complicated. You're going to have to use some tactics for shopping ads. You're going to have to use some slightly different tactics for search ads to get the data to do what you want. And every platform does have different ad types. I think Google and Meta are probably a little bit more advanced than most, but just become familiar with the different ad types. And again, this is included in the cheat sheet. But it's really cool right now. I think the main takeaway for everybody, it's really cool that you have these new shopping catalog type of ad types for e-com brands. You upload your catalog and you get to run ads for these specific products. It's really helpful for sales. It's no longer where you just create a pretty image and then hopefully it kind of converts. These shopping and catalog ads have been very successful, especially with AI now sort of understanding what people are going to want and how to put you next to other products that might be of similar style. And so what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to automate sometimes how some of these tracking parameters and autofill and reduce that manual workflow. And so I just want to talk about what that looks like. In Meta, they have what's called dynamic parameters. It sounds, if you're not familiar, it may sound complicated. Essentially what it is a little piece of code that's in the cheat sheet that we'll give you. You just paste it inside of your UTM field when you're creating an ad, and it's just going to pull what you name your campaign, what you name your ad set, and what you name your ad. It's just going to pull that data right in and auto-populate that UTM. So really, what you name your campaign, et cetera, is what your UTM says. And it makes your life way easier. You're not always creating these UTMs. On Google Ads, you have what are value track parameters. So essentially in Google Ads, you can use macros. So you can kind of set these rules that all of our ads are going to have these different trackers at these different levels. So at the content level, term, and campaign level. And it captures automatically different data from your ads. And so macros are very helpful on Google, and you definitely want to learn about them. Now, obviously, with limited time today, I don't have time to jump into every single detail. I'll get to the questions at the end, guys. Keep sending in the questions, and we'll make sure we get to those at the end. So again, you want to make your life easier. And what I said earlier is you're going to learn enough to be dangerous. At least know these terms, and utilizing ChatGPT and Google and asking your agency will hopefully help them answer or work with us if you'd like. They should be able to answer these questions for you and get you set up for success. I want to talk a little bit about catalog tracking inside of Meta because one of the things that I find most valuable is, again, the shopping and catalog types of ads. And here's what that looks like. So the source is always going to be Facebook, right? The medium is going to be paid social. The campaign in this example, I'm just going to put advantage shopping. And then the term is going to be dynamic. So this is what we mean by dynamic inputs through Facebook. And then the UTM content, here's where it gets pretty cool. I'm going to put product ID, product name, and ad name, and that's going to populate if that information exists in my UTM. So again, that's what makes it so helpful. If you have things set up correctly, you can input multiple parameters at the content level. Okay, so if these platforms give you a lot of different parameters you use, you can stuff them in different levels if you'd like, right? I'm putting 3 things into that UTM content, and that helps because some of these ads don't have, like, one of the most popular ones that we like to use is the ad name. But if it's just a product ad showing up, it's not actually going to have an ad name. It's a little bit technical, but for those of you who are in the weeds and understand that you're not going to have ad names for certain shopping campaigns. All right, so you want to make sure you understand this and start building your strategy around it and combining creative and product tracking where possible. Now, utilizing tools like Uplifter and stuff like that, like you can create different ad IDs and different things that you can associate with other information. We're not going to get into that today. I'm a big fan as well of just putting the ad name and the product name inside of the UTM, so that it shows up right away in the dashboards. Okay, so really quickly on Google Ad, the same thing, just like keyword for search ads, product ID automatically fills when the product ID that fills in the product ID that was clicked in the shopping ad. Here's an example of what that UTM looks like, what the parameter is, and what that output was. And again, here you're using, we're looking at product ID, kind of like we did for Facebook. Okay, so the product ID dynamically fills in. An example here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the creative ID would be cute dog vid. So the problem is that I want the name of the product. And so I'm going to give you guys some things that you can try to make this work, because there are some challenges here. Let's talk about real quick the value check macros as well. A few more things you can do. I just want to make sure we cover this. So keyword can be used in search ads, product ID in shopping ads. Placement is going to be important for PMax, display in YouTube, ad group ID, and then device here. So PMax, much like shopping ads, it's dynamic. It changes all the time. So you can only really use the placement as a good tracker for that one. And again, you do not have the ability to do product name or product, or like it does for product ID. So I did want to cover these real quick before I go back to product name. So here's 3 workarounds to get your product name inside of the your UTM for Google Ads. So you can manually include it if you have a few products. If you have a small catalog, you can name each shopping campaign or ad group to include the product name. You can also use the Merchant Center feed custom labels. So in Merchant Center, you can use custom labels that will dynamically pass this info into your UTMs. And then this is probably the recommended approach that I would do, which is obviously setting up enhanced e-commerce tracking for GA4, and then use GTM to capture that product name from the data layer and append it to your UTM dynamically on click events. So this will help you guys make sure that that product name gets through and again shows up in your data. So ad platforms have many parameters that can further enhance tracking. Start with the basics if you're just getting going, and then understand some of those ad types that are most relevant. If you're in e-commerce, shopping and catalog are obviously really important. And you may not want to just rely on product IDs. You may want to put the product name in there so that when the data comes out, you can see what actual product was leading to the sale. And then use dynamic tracking to add these parameters to your UTMs as needed. I do want to just belay the point a little bit, but if you understand what products are selling well in Shopify and what customers are buying them, and then you understand the activity on the paid media side on what's driving sales of those products, I mean, that's some of the most important information you have as an e-com. That's why you're seeing me hype it so much, because it's like, if you don't like, that's critical, right? You want to sell more products, what products are selling, and that's how you're going to get that information. I do want to do a quick recap of the parameters that are available in both networks. So we touched on quite a few of these, and all of these can capture different information, and you have to decide what information is most important. The 2 that I highlighted, or obviously I've already highlighted product, but again, I just want to reiterate that PMax is so dynamic because, you know, it's powered by AI, that you're really limited to placement when it comes to PMax. Where was that ad shown that it works so well? And so just understand some of those little nuances and limitations. Even if you're advanced, I know that's probably good to review and recap. And then Facebook, aka Meta, has different parameters as well that you can look at. And again, these will be in the cheat sheet. Okay, let's conclude with the 7 common UTM mistakes that we see happening, and I really hope you guys do everything you can to avoid these. And let's go over them. So first mistake is not using them because you never created them. You just run ads and hope that, the platforms can optimize. It's not saying that it won't work, but you're never going to be able to truly get clean data. The second biggest mistake is not using them because you never review that information. We've had customers who utilize UTMs and then never go and look at the data. And it's like, well, you have really good information. If you just took a second to review, they get a little OCD about setting it up, but then they don't really go back and take a look at what happened and why. The third biggest mistake that we see is overcomplicating this. As you get started, you're going to want to pack a lot of information. If you're not spending a lot of money, you should keep it as simple as possible, more simple than you probably even want. As you scale your spend, then it makes more sense to put more information into these UTMs. It's much better for you to have a few things to measure than so many that you kind of get overwhelmed or your team gets overwhelmed. Inconsistent naming is another thing. There's a ton of information that, there's a lot of room for error. So make sure that you always use the right naming. Uppercase, lowercase can matter. And make sure that you just kind of have a good key where you can maybe copy paste some of the consistent short codes that you're using for your UTMs. Bad setup or configuration. Utilizing auto tagging, dynamic tracking, and some of the items that we talked about or touched on today is really important, right? If you're not setting yourself up for success and prepared, then you're not going to have the data on the other side, and that's where it matters, right? Conversion tracking is really critical, and again, we power dashboards, but if you don't have your conversion tracking set up, you're not going to have the information you need. We've seen a lot of brands rely fully on just the agency's naming. And I think it's important to note that you are responsible for your data. If you don't ask your agency how they're naming and collaborate with them, or maybe ask them to add more, then that's on you. I think, agencies are going to do what benefits them. And obviously they want to help you too, but they're not going to maybe think about the greater business information. They're just focused on their metrics and their numbers. So definitely talk to them and give them some of the ideas that we proposed today, and maybe you can get more information out of their efforts. Lack of knowledge. So unaware of how to use UTMs, and you guys are all investing in that today, and congrats for doing that. I hope that this crash course was able to help you guys understand different aspects of UTMs. And so obviously with limited time, there's only so much we can cover, but I hope that you guys found it helpful. I'm going to get to Q&A here in a second. I know we have about 15 minutes, but I do want you guys to know for attendees today, this is a survey. It's going to be a survey that you're going to take after this. We're gathering a lot of knowledge from professionals like yourself on how they use UTMs. It's a 2-minute survey, literally like a few questions. And then that'll redirect you to the cheat sheet that we referenced. Within that cheat sheet, you're also going to have some information on Uplifter. I think they also posted the discount code here on the chat. And hopefully that's going to be a good way for you guys to start getting to work and applying some of this knowledge. All right. So with that said, Phil, do you want to jump back on and take on some questions?
Yeah, sure. There's one question in chat. Oh, can you hear me okay, by the way? Or
yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I mean, this is a tricky-ish one. It's an anonymous question. With increased tracking protection with Safari's in-link tracking, so what we're talking about here is this is Safari in private mode, which is not the default, thankfully. But it's increasingly, there's more users that are kind of finding that kind of in private mode, especially on mobile.
Yeah.
What happens on that one is either UTMs or GCL IDs are getting kind of stripped off, or in kind of non-default mode, cookies which are set when someone lands from a UTM or GCL ID or a campaign tracking parameter, they get shortened to 7 days rather than like 6 months or longer. With the shortening of the 7-day cookie, there are solutions. So like Stape's a good one, where they have a means to kind of reset the cookie using a server-side cookie so that it persists longer than 7 days. Although you do need to be using GTM server-side to be able to kind of like do that. So that's their cookie keeper solution. So that's one way around the first bit. The second bit, which is about kind of stripping off the GCL ID and other, that I would say, and that's where I would defer to Uplifter and similar for solutions where that you get the parameter passed on the redirect, like the 301, and that parameter, because you can't like stop a click or redirect happening, but you can change it as it on the endpoint. So there may be mechanisms to store that GCL ID and other parameters and kind of relook up those values like after the 301. So there may be means to kind of like technical means to kind of restore that. Very similar to kind of click fraud tools, the same type of approach. But yeah, I would suggest if you have a chat with Alex from Uplifter, he may have some creative solutions for that, how to kind of overcome that bit. I would just say that obviously be mindful that you don't want to override a user's desire not to be tracked. So if there is a global a GC with a global privacy control signal to say opt out, which is a targeting signal, you might possibly want to kind of not do anything like funky with those users, because that's like in effect a server-side signal.
So I was just going to say for that one, we do typically see how to work with an agency or vendor name and UTM. I definitely see that happening, and it's important to add that if you have internal and external teams. We've seen agencies perform and internal teams perform, and comparing those with the UTM is very standard. Usually the agency will put in like their initials or something in all of the work that they do. So yeah, I would do it at the campaign level, typically what we see, and then the agency can just put their initials. Dynamic parameters available for X and Twitter. Ooh, that's a good question. I'll have to get back to you on that. Admittedly, I have not done a lot on X recently, but it is a growing platform, and if they ever don't, utilizing dynamic, utilizing a tool like Uplifter or our cheat sheet to create that UTM works the same, and then investigating what parameters X offers is going to be important. I would assume that they're going to get more and more advanced. They're adding payments now to the platform, and so some of the most success you'll have in e-commerce, or I guess in marketing in general, digital marketing in general, is being an early mover. And so I know that AppLovin was a huge success for so many in Q4 last year, and the early adopters really got a lot out of it. So whether it's X or TikTok, always putting a little bit of your budget towards these other platforms is a really good idea. X seems to be growing. So
Alex, I put the Meta ones in chat.
okay.
The with X does drop a kind of like Twitter or similar to a Facebook click ID. They do drop that on land. I'm not sure they got dynamic parameters, but like hardly anyone uses X, so I'm not sure.
Looks like, let's see here. Can you share more info about macro dynamic for Google Ads? I know that was asked before. I went into more detail, so let me know, Lucia, if there's anything specific that I missed that you may want in more detail. I just want to make sure I spend enough time on that part.
I've just put the Google value track list into chat.
Yep.
Just important note on it is there's, rather annoyingly, there's no campaign value track field, which is really annoying.
Yeah.
But I normally suggest setting a generic, so turning on UTM parameters, even if you're using Google Ads, because you want the GCL ID and UTMs, especially if you're doing either end-to-end tracking or phone call tracking, and you want to store it in a CRM when someone submits on a either newsletter or contact form. So actually, normally I'd say put it on the final URL at account level, but also cover the campaign level if you're in order to get the campaign name, which is not exposed at account level, annoyingly.
Phil, I think, you're very familiar with the different makeup of this, but from what we've done and seen, it's a combination. You want to do some macros and some manual. Again, like Phil said, some things are not available, like campaign and and the value IDs. And so I would use both. And Phil, you've had some good insight. You and I have had some good conversations if you want to share on that too.
Yeah, always both, because there's a chance that a GCL ID gets stripped off or truncated, whereas if you make sure you've got your UTM source equal Google and medium equal CPC, you're kind of double covered. And also you can even use a hash parameter rather than a query string,
Right.
which can persist a bit more. The only time I would say not to use specifically GCL IDs is if it's an affiliate campaign sending traffic directly to a brand, because that then automatically shows as Google CPC rather than the actual affiliate. And I've seen that cause issues with affiliates where they're like, why am I not attributed for this? It's because you actually have to turn off GCL IDs and use manual tracking.
Yeah, please everybody fill out that survey so you can get the slides and more. Definitely would love to know how we did and how we can do better. Yeah, I think I'd love to know if anybody has any questions around the catalog or just strategy. I mean, the thing about UTMs is that you can name it whatever you want. I mean, you can name a campaign whatever you want, and I think the openness of it is both empowering and intimidating. And so the most important thing is that you know what you're tracking and you have a proper strategy initially set up for measuring success, and so you can do more of what works and less of what doesn't. I guess, Phil, whenever you see UTMs, have you seen anybody with a lot of spend use a ton of different parameters, or do they usually keep it under 5 or?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of like either, well, I mean, if you connect to HubSpot, you'll automatically add some parameters. And the same
Right.
with kind of double click or SA360. I would say there's a kind of a missed trick in some ways is also not just forgetting to add final URLs at account level in Google Ads, but also utilizing the certain kind of demographic data that you can get out of certain networks that's not available in others. For example,
Right.
you could store data from Facebook about users and what they like and what they don't, store that as cookies and use that in essence to progressively profile those users. Use that data from Facebook and then obviously the search data from Google. So in essence, you kind of use the power of both, like the specific kind of nuances of those networks to kind of enrich like first party data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Perfect.
I would add one other thing, which is not everyone knows there's kind of 4 new UTM fields. I've just put those into chat. So actually, quite a good one is marketing tactic, which is underutilized.
Yeah.
And also creative formats kind of on there. So and actually the other one, UTM ID is a good one, which is often used for affiliate tracking or as a fallback to show the GCL ID, because rather than only in GA4, it hides the GCL ID, or at least doesn't make it easy to pull out. So sometimes storing that in UTM is quite helpful for then later being able to like export that GCL ID and import into Google Ads or connect to an offline system. But it's quite annoying that the networks don't allow you to look up a GCL ID to other values,
Right.
which I wish they would kind of open it up.
Like Alex is saying, they don't all show in GA4 unless you use BigQuery. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it's good to capture the raw data. Yeah,
All
I've
right. Go ahead,
okay.
Phil.
I would say it's an obvious mistake which still happens even today is I've sometimes seen like paid search agencies underreport by having stuff attributed to organic. In fact, it's actually happened at a large voucher code site where the in-house PPC manager didn't tag the ads correctly, and it was all reported as organic, and we kind of wondered, and the organic lady didn't like report the problem because obviously it was making her look good. So I would say it's useful to have an external company kind of review it that's impartial, like that, like they're not like they're more interested in telling you if it's correct or not, rather than have their own kind of bias. Yeah, because you don't want underreporting or over-reporting to a particular channel. Oh, someone's asked how do you suggest to use a UTM_ID? So using it to either store an affiliate ID or the network click ID, so Facebook click ID, Bing click ID, etc. I did actually on SlideShare, there's an old talk that I did about reworking like GA3's attribution for UTM tracking. I can probably dig it out later in the notes, where I kind of just completely rebuilt how it processed its session-based UTM parameters. This was for a site that was a massive affiliate, and they wanted to align their affiliate system with how GA4 or GA3 actually that time worked. So that's got some good kind of stuff in terms of advanced uses of like tracking UTMs specifically. How do you deal with data part of the users not accepting cookies aligning with the first triple? Yeah, I think there are. I think using redirect tools and session-based tools is a good idea, because sometimes you'll see, for instance, the network showing a different count of clicks versus the actual count of sessions. And that can be because of ad blocking and stuff, but it's useful to compare the ratio of, for instance, Google Ads clicks versus Google CPC sessions, just to see if has it dropped by 15% or whatnot. And obviously, Alex, your tools make it easier to kind of run that comparison to see if there's what's the change kind of over time, and is there a spike in kind of ad blocking or more clicks and not enough options. I think that also happens if someone's sending traffic to Amazon. So it's kind of like you see lots of clicks but no actual sessions. I think someone's asked here about using Facebook CAPI. That it doesn't server side and CAPI. It doesn't actually affect the kind of attribution. What it does affect though is data accuracy in terms of getting more stuff kind of through ad blockers. So it's more like an uplift in everything, not yeah. What I would say a better option is we did a community template for dark social tracking, which is a free to use one, which will move anything that's stored as direct traffic. If it detects a Facebook click ID on a landing page, it will move it into Facebook organic social. So that can help kind of recapture or re-identify that direct mistracked traffic.
And you already answered the UTM ID one, right, Phil?
Yes, I'll have to find the link in chat. I think if you search on SlideShare for affiliate monster, there's some slides that show up which describe the method that I used.
All right. Well, I think we're good to conclude there. I really appreciate MeasureMinds, great partners as always, for letting us do this together with you guys. Everybody for attending, investing in yourself. Hope you got a lot out of it. We do these webinars with MeasureMinds over at from PenPath all the time, and again, your feedback is super helpful. So definitely let us know. And anything else you want to go over, Phil, before concluding?
I just wanted to remind people to check out the Uplifter kind of QR code. They've kindly given us a 20% or 20% discount for attendees. So go check out their tool. Obviously, that's and I think they've got a free option, so you can try it and see if it fits, sort of thing. I think especially for bigger brands where using a Google Sheet is not really an ideal solution. So go scan that or try the link. And also, we've got an event coming up in a couple of months' time for privacy for marketers, and so Will's going to post the link to that, so you can sign up for that. That will be a free to attend event, although we are looking for sponsors for that, and hence the more people that can try out these tools, and it makes it easier then to get kind of sponsors for and keep these events free. I don't have anything else to cover, Alex, but thank you for doing that talk and some useful tips and tricks there. And I think it's kind of an area that's under kind of utilized, and definitely something that people should like double check, make sure it's working sort of correctly, especially before like the big campaign rolls out, or suddenly everything's misreported, which is hard to change like after it's happened.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.